Okay, welcome back. What we want to look at is the environmental protection legislations. And this plays an important part in regards to environmental development and rebuilding of properties these days. Now, we do have a responsibility and we need to look at that overall. Now, if you're doing the 2357 or the 5357, this will come as part of your delivery naturally, okay? But it may not be applicable so much so in the 2365. But I could be wrong. It's just that I have not seen it in the same depth as I've seen it in the 2357, 5357. So understanding environmental legislations, working practices, and the principles of environmental technology systems. Okay, understand the environmental legislations, working practices, and principles which are relevant to work activities. Now you're part of this system. You kind of get away from it, okay? Now outcome. Understand the environmental legislations, working practices, and principles which are relevant to work activities. Now, by the end of this outcome, you will have had the opportunity to specify the current, relevant or processing waste, describe what is meant by the term environment, describe the ways in which the environment may be affected by work activities, that is yours or others, identify and interpret the requirements for electrical installations as outlined in relevant sections of the building regulations and the code for sustainable homes. Now the code for sustainable homes, to the best of my knowledge, has since changed, but I have not had a look at what it says lately here, because again, when I looked at it last year, it seemed to have changed again. And due to the changes which we are going to be going through in regards to Brexit, well, we don't quite know what's going to happen there just yet, so we'll wait and see what legislation or amendments we need to consider. State materials and products that are classified as hazardous to the environment be recyclable. Describe the organizational procedures for processing materials that are classed as hazardous to the environment and recyclable. Now, some of you would have recognized the word hazardous from the health and safety elements which we did in 301. Okay? Environment. Now, the Environmental Protection Act 1990 defines the environment as follows. The environment consists of all or any of the following: the air, water, and land. Air includes the air within buildings and the air within other natural or man-made structures above or below ground. Okay. And here we only give you a few examples of those structures and the waste that will be involved in this. Now, waste created from construction work. 10 million tons of construction products are wasted every year at a cost of 1.5 billion. Now that figure may have changed since. It may have gone up or it may have gone down, but the idea here would be to look at HSE website and see whether or not waste created by construction, or see what they have to say in regards to any update that might now be necessary. Much of this waste is harmful to the environment. Waste can be reduced by only ordering or taking from the stores what you need, returning unused items to the supplier if possible, or use them on another job, using recycled items if available, okay, asking suppliers to use only the minimum packaging, separating waste into coded containers or skips for reclaiming or recycling, making storage areas secure and weatherproof to prevent wind and rain damaging materials, covering or netting any loose materials to prevent them being spread and possibly causing pollution. Okay. Now the Environmental Protection Act 1990. Okay. Now, term pollution of the environment definition: pollution of the environment due to the release into or on air, land, or water from any process which are capable of causing harm to man or any other living organisms, supported by the environment. Harm: harm to the health of living organisms or other interference with the ecological systems of which they form part, and in the case of man, includes offence caused to any of his senses or harm to his property, and harmless has the opposite meaning. Now I have no idea why they've put this into there, harmless, but if we're talking about harm, then we're looking at what damage it's doing to the environment, or what damage has been done to the environment. Okay. Now, if it's harmless, then that's something else completely different. That means it's possible that it has been treated before being released into the atmosphere or into the environment, but I'm sure that will be for another time. Waste: this means any scrap material or liquid arising from a process, anything broken or worn out. Also, waste means anything discarded. Okay. Now we're still dealing with the Environmental Protection Act of 1990. Okay. And again, controlled waste: household, industrial, or commercial waste. Controlled waste, household, industrial, or commercial waste. Household waste: waste from a domestic property, caravan, etc., etc. Okay. Now, industrial waste. Now, this probably will need the most care and handling, and will need a more precise managerial management to handle this waste. Waste from the supply of public gas, water or electricity or sewage, postal or telecommunications. Commercial waste: waste from premises used for trade, etc. Producer: anyone who produces waste or anyone who carries out processing, mixing, or changing the waste. The process: any activities carried on in Great Britain, whether on premises or by means of mobile plant, which are capable of causing pollution of the environment. Okay, and here we're still on the Environmental Protection Act. Now, again, mobile plant can be considered as a hazard, or plant which is designed to be moved by road or otherwise. Substance shall be treated as including electricity or heat. Substance released: now here, released into the air, some substances like gases and so forth, exhaust fumes from cars, can be taken into account, and how it affects the environment. It may not affect you directly, but do you drive a car yourself? Therefore, you're passing on or exuding emission gases from your vehicle. Enforcing authority: the enforcing authority in England and Wales is the Environment Agency or the local authority. Authorization is authorization for a process either on site or by mobile plant. Okay. Now, the Environmental Protection Act is divided into parts. Part 1, Integrated Pollution Control. This part has been replaced by the Pollution Prevention Act 1999 and the Environmental Permitting Act 2010. Now again, you need to consider whether or not there has been any other amendments to this since that time, and it's always worthwhile checking again, looking onto the HSE website, seeing what they've done and seeing whether or not there has been any updates to this. Part 2, waste on land. This part of the Act introduced a new system of covering the management and disposal of waste. Under Section 33 of the Act, it is an offence to dispose of, treat or store controlled waste without a waste management license. Part 2 also places a duty of care on anyone who produces, imports, keeps, carries, disposes of, or acts as a broker of controlled waste. Now, remember, you're level 3, so at this stage now, I shouldn't need to be reading this out to you. You should be able to read this for yourself. But in the reference to style of learning and to ensure that everyone can understand what's happening, then it may be appropriate that I continue to take it on this role. Okay, so part 2 under Section 33 of the Act, a person cannot deposit controlled waste or knowingly cause or permit controlled waste to be deposited in or on land unless an environmental permit authorizing the deposit is in force and the deposit is in accordance with the said permit. In short terms, you need a permit to deposit or to dump waste. And if that permit is not in order, then you can be prosecuted. And I'm believing here that's what the Environmental Protection Act 1990 is trying to imply. Submit controlled waste or knowingly cause or permit controlled waste to be submitted to any listed operation that is carried out in or on land or by means of mobile plant in any way other than by an environmental permit. Is not carried out in accordance with an environmental permit. Treat, keep or dispose of controlled waste in a manner likely to cause pollution of the environment or harm human health. Now again, make sure you're up to date. Look at the HSE website. I cannot emphasize that point more than anything else. Look at the IE regs, keep that in mind. Look at the on-site guide, okay? They will bring it into place. Now, there is already, I believe, amendments in place in regards to the IE regs, but those amendments is going to be ongoing. So for my part, I wouldn't actually rush out to do a course on the 18th edition just yet. I will give it a couple of years to wait for the regulations to be properly updated and any additional amendments to be brought into place. But remember that as the amendments are brought in, you will need to be familiar with those and you need to make sure that you are updating yourself with those amendments. And I do believe that the IE regulation company releases these appropriately. Okay. Now, moving waste. When controlled waste is carried in or deposited from a motor vehicle, the person who is in control of the vehicle shall be treated as knowingly caused the waste to be deposited, whether or not he gave the instructions. A person who breaks the rules for waste disposal is committing an offence, unless it is found that they took all reasonable precautions to avoid the offence, or it was done in an emergency to protect human health. Okay, but here you have some waste which has simply been dumped by fly tipping again. Okay, these are the things we're trying to avoid, and by making you responsible at this early stage at level 3 now, because some of you guys will become managers and it will be your responsibility. Be aware of that. Okay. Duty of care. It is a duty of care of any person who imports, carries, keeps or disposes of control waste or who controls waste to make sure that as far as reasonable care is taken to prevent the breaking of any regulations, to prevent the escape of waste from his control, to transfer waste to only authorized persons. It is the duty of the occupier of domestic premises to take all reasonable measures to make sure that household waste is only given to an authorized person or authorized transport. Now, Part 2A, Contaminated Land. This was added to the Act in 1995. Local authorities have a duty to inspect land to identify whether any contamination has taken place. Contaminated land is land which appears to be in such a condition caused by substances on the land to which significant harm is being caused. Pollution of water is or is likely to be caused. Construction sites can contribute to contamination through polluted water being put down the drains, chemical substances, leaking drums, unsecured items blown in the wind, waste not sorted and sent to the unlicensed sites. And let me just go back to that a moment, because this is what we're talking about now, okay? Contamination of the land. And that's what we're trying to avoid. It's in everybody's interest to comply with this. Part 3, Statutory Nuisance and Clean Air. This part of the Act defines the following statutory nuisances: smoke emitted from premises, fumes or gases, noise emitted from premises or vehicles, noise that is harmful, machinery, artificial light which causes a nuisance. Now, artificial light will cause a nuisance in the way that it can be continually flickering on and off, and that can induce if strobing light can induce epilepsy, if I remember correctly, but don't hold me to that, because times may have changed and maybe the frequency doesn't cause epilepsy anymore, but I know that many moons ago it did, if it flashed at a given rate. Environmental Permitting England and Wales Regulations 2010. An environmental permit is a document prepared by a regulator, either the environmental agency or your local authority. It has conditions which you must follow to prevent your business from harming the environment or human health. There are two main types of environmental permit. Standard permit. The environmental agency issues standard permits to operators whose activity is able to comply with a set of standard rules. Bespoke permits contain site-specific conditions written for your activity. They are generally more expensive and take longer to process than a standard permit, because the environmental risk and impact of the activity or operation must be assessed. Okay, now here we have Waste England Regulation 2011 and the Waste Miscellaneous Provision Wales 2011 Regulation. Now again, read this information for yourselves. List of typical hazardous waste are acids, alkaline solutions, batteries, cathode ray tubes, etc. Duty of care. Again, as I've said before, you have a duty of care. Read the information for yourselves. If you're transporting demolition waste yourself, you must be registered as a waste carrier, and you must make sure you transfer it only to authorized site operators. And here, just a simple copy. Consignment note used when transferring hazardous waste. This is your consignment note. Bear in mind that's what it would be on your lorry, or you must be able to produce it as such. Okay. Preventing pollution. The environment cannot be affected by your work. Recycle when possible. Again, you can read this for yourself. You don't need me to be reading that to you. Reducing waste in the electrotechnical industry. You can reduce waste by using leftover materials from one job. Look for the shortest cabling route whenever possible. Avoid over ordering. Reduce your packaging. Recycle where you can. Recycle where you cannot eliminate or reduce waste. Now, obviously, you need, if you're running trunking, if you're running tray, if you're running armored cables, you need to allow the factor of a measured amount for termination and taking that into account. Okay, here recycling. Again here, that's for you to read for yourselves. You don't need me to be reading that to you. Control of noise at work regulations 2005. Okay, now employers to prevent or reduce risk to health and safety from exposure to noise at work. Okay, that's part of the requirements in regards to the regulations 2005 in regards to noise control. And here we have a few examples of how noise levels can be controlled, damping for start, etc. Packaging essential requirements, regulations. Now again here, reuse your packaging, because there's been a lot of changes now in the way we deal with this at the moment. Okay, and that is ongoing, and that is good to see. Environment Act 1995, Part 1, Part 2, Part 4, Part 5. Now, oh, blow me. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that. Just I heard a loud noise just now, someone calling my name. So, okay. Now Now I don't mean we as in we. I mean we as in the waste, electrical and electronic equipment. And that is something that you need to be familiar with as electricians, and those are the people who will handle your electrical waste. Okay, now you can read that for yourself. You don't need me to be reading that to you. Now again, remember regulations 2006. Items, large household appliances, fridges, etc. Small household appliances, vacuum cleaners, so forth. Here are the items that you need to bear in mind. And I would like you to answer these questions for me as well, please. Now use the information in the text to answer these questions. We won't need to change anything here. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.